That's 7:30. Madam Mayor, I'll leave that in there.
Wait, what are you leaving in my hands?
You're the presider of the meeting.
We're not stopping.
Okay.
We can move her if we have to. Right?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our regularly scheduled city council meeting. It's Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. I hereby welcome you and call this meeting to order. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we're going to remain standing for words of inspiration.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Have our words of inspiration now. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our community of Clawson. We thank you for each person sitting here this evening that is willing to serve our community in whatever capacity you have led them to do. We ask for your protection over this community, for all the people who serve here, for those who live here, and for those who choose to have their businesses. As we enter into this time of the holiday season with so many things to celebrate, Lord, I ask you to touch people's hearts and lives and let them see the wonder that you created in the beginning. Let them feel joy and peace, whether they are celebrators or not celebrators. And Lord, may you be a comforter of the people who are going through hardship right now, especially those for our former police officer Ryan McDonald's family. Lord, we grieve with them today as they lost their precious father, husband, brother. We just ask that you touch the hearts that are hurting today and to help us all to be sources to lift people up. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Vinkowski.
Here.
Mayor Juan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Thank you. Would we like to approve our agenda?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Vinkowski.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you. We've approved our agenda. We'll move on to the next item, which is public comment. If you would like to speak to any item that is on our agenda this evening, we welcome you to come to our podium. We'll allow you 3 minutes. We ask that you state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Linda Hale, and I live at 940 West Selfridge. So I sent everyone an email. I hope that you've all been able to read it. My concern is I'd like the council to discuss, maybe add to the agenda, the proposal to buy Shawm from the school district. I know that we've brought it up before and it really hasn't gotten addressed. I have a neighbor that said that he thought that it was in the process of being addressed. I'm not really sure where we stand with that, but I know that the school system is on a time frame. And from what I've heard, that they already accepted bids, but it's not completely gelled in yet, so that there's still time. And because there's still time, I would like to present to the city that this is our last shot, because if it's turned over to a contractor, then they can do with it whatever they will, right? Which is maybe a proposal of 50, 60 McMansions with whatever, apartments, condos, whatever it is that they're proposing. And I feel that if the city were to buy Shawm, it would be a much better footprint for our city than having a contractor come in and demolish Shawm and put in all that housing. I also think that the housing is probably not so good for our city sewer system either. So I wrote myself a little note, and I think that it makes much more sense for the city to buy Shawm and to utilize it. I know that we have right now we currently have Hunter, And Hunter is in disrepair and needs a lot of updating. And so might the council consider maybe swapping Hunter or selling off Hunter and having the whole city services right there in the Shawm area? Sell off Hunter or swap it, give it to the school system, let them sell Hunter. We keep Shawm and make it part of the city park area. That way we could have city services at Shawm, we could have Parks and Rec at Shawm, we could have senior services, whatever. There's a plethora of things that I'm sure that the city could do with that. Anyway, I was just, and I know that it's brought up sometimes that Shawm also needs some work, but before this last bond issue, we had passed, I don't know how many years ago it was, a bond issue for the school system to be updated, and we passed that, and Shawm was part of that. So I don't know how bad of shape it could be in. The school says that it's not in great shape, but it's certainly in much better shape than Hunter, that's for sure. So I know that the school system is on a timeline, and that's why I'm here. I mean, I don't know what you have to do to change that, because that timeline is coming up in January. I went to the school board meeting last night, and their next meeting in January is going to be discussion on which bid that they want. And I think that the city should work with the school system, or the school system work with the city, and maybe get us Shawm and keep it in the family.
Thank you. As this is not an agenda item, but you did hear her say she'd like to add it to, are you guys willing to add this discussion to our agenda this evening? If that's the formal way, just for a discussion talking point, if she is correct, we have not formally discussed it. Yes.
I think you could probably justify discussing it during the resolution, because that's
Okay.
part of.
All right, that's a good idea.
All
That's a
right,
good idea. Then
yeah. Thanks. I also think that Hunter would be a great deal for the school system to take, because there's a lot of building going on in that area. A lot of houses are going up. I think it only makes more sense for them to continue on that housing in the Hunter area.
All right, thank
That's
you.
it. Thanks.
Then we'll address this when we get to an item later on in our agenda. Anyone else for items that are on the agenda? Would you like to speak?
This isn't on the agenda, right?
It is not, but we do have an item about working with the school district later on in the agenda. And when we get to that point, we will come back to this because it's very relevant, correct? Okay, thank you. If I don't see anyone else coming, so we'll close public discussion for right now and then move on to proclamations and presentations. We have with us this evening our state representative, Sharon McDonald. She's our 56th Health District representative, and she's here to give us an update. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Milan, City Council members, city staff, and people of Clawson. I'm sorry to learn about the passing of Officer Ryan McDonald. I had not heard about that. I'd like to offer my sincere sympathies to his family and loved ones. But thank you so much for allowing me to spend a few moments with you today to offer my legislative update for the end of the 2023 legislative year. As you said, I am State Representative Sharon McDonald of District 56, which includes Clawson, most of Troy, Royal Oak, parts of Royal Oak, Birmingham, and Bloomfield Township. My Lansing office staff includes my legislative aide and constituents lead, Kelly Jones. So far, she's led our office in fielding nearly 11,000 emails and helping over 3,000 constituents. Constituent concerns, for those who aren't familiar with reaching out to the state rep's office or your legislator's office, they can range from sharing ideas about upcoming votes to losing power and how to get back on, and needing help to sign up for unemployment benefits is pretty common. Our constituents in District 56 may contact our office for assistance at 517-373-2617. I'll repeat that at the end, and I know it'll be on video forever. Also on my staff and here with me tonight is my legislative director, Matt Dargay, who works on all things policy by taking our legislative ideas from the initial concept to being signed by the governor, hopefully. Matt is also now a Clawson resident. On to the update. We've had a very busy year in Lansing. in this, my first year, I've sponsored or co-sponsored 350 bills and 30 resolutions. My most recent legislation was signed into law by Governor Whitmer 10 days ago and is now in effect. And it's a package of 2 bills that are commonly known as Justice for Allie. It is named after a young woman with Down syndrome in Troy who was exploited online in 2017. After it happened, it became apparent that there was no law in Michigan that made it a crime to sexually target vulnerable adults online, which is outrageous. And vulnerable adults, as you may know, include those with such issues as Alzheimer's or intellectual or developmental disabilities who sometimes need help making safe decisions. The legislature passed the bills unanimously this fall in a very rare bipartisan win in Lansing. And today, those who sexually target vulnerable adults online will face serious consequences and jail time. During the state budget process this summer, I secured $10 million for the noise walls that will be built along I-75, much to the relief of residents in Troy who have witnessed increased road noise there since major construction was completed. And this was a multi-year project that legislators in the area have been raising money for since about 2020. This is the 3rd appropriation based on the previous 2 appropriations. But in the appropriations process, then we were not awarded funds for Clawson projects, but we do have a plan to make the Dreon Stevens School Roads water main replacement and road reconstruction project a top priority in 2024. Changing that a little bit, early this year, we passed a lot of popular legislation, all of which is now law or will be soon. That includes repealing the anti-labor right to work laws of a previous administration, the repeal of retirement taxes, and an increase in the earned income tax credit for working families. We passed a very popular package of common sense gun safety bills that maintain over 70% approval among Michiganders. And those laws will create universal background checks and will help keep guns out of the hands of criminals and away from children. Last month, we passed a clean energy package that puts Michigan at the forefront of the country, top 5, in preparing for a clean energy future. It includes a mandate that by the year 2040, energy generated in Michigan will be 100% carbon neutral. Now, a bit more about the budget for fiscal year 2024. We made some good strides for the people and municipalities of Michigan and District 56. We approved a $62 million year-over-year increase in revenue sharing with municipalities, which I'm sure is good news and should bring more of Clawson's money back to Clawson. A 5% increase in per pupil funding for all public K-12 school students, which is the largest year-over-year increase in history. Universal free breakfasts and lunches for all public K-12 students. We also approved the largest year-over-year increase in funding to the Special Education Foundation Allowance, with extra support for economically disadvantaged students. And we approved much needed $328 million for student mental health and school safety. These new laws and budget items are just a few of the hundreds of improvements that the 102nd legislature has brought to Michigan. And what I'm up to, in addition to my 5 committees, this summer I restarted the Michigan Legislative Disability Caucus, in which experts in the field, families and persons with disabilities strategize ways to make their lives better and services easier to navigate. I was also appointed to the Attorney General's Elder Abuse Task Force, where we focus on protecting older Michiganders from all forms of exploitation. So that's just a small portion of our activity in Lansing so far this term. And again, if constituents have questions or anyone else has a question or need, they may contact my office at 517-373-2617. And finally, I want to wish all of you and the citizens of Clawson a wonderful holiday season and very happy new year. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions if you have any. If I don't have the answers, I will get them back to you with Matt's good help. Thank you.
Ms. McConnell, there's been a lot of discussion in this town lately about infrastructure improvements and grants for that. I know, Mr. Raker, and you've been working hand in hand to try to secure some of those grants. In this year, at least you were unable to secure them as you hoped. If you could give us kind of an overall picture of how the process works and how much money is in play. I'm assuming the state budget has some pool of money that's available to distribute to various communities. How big is that pool? And maybe I'm asking too big of a question.
That's a great
here, but-
question. I don't have that exact figure. I can get that to you. I know everyone's heard that this year's budget was $82 billion, which sounds crazy. Part of that is because we had a lot of money from the federal government, even COVID dollars that were still left over. And they had to be spent this year or they would go back to the Fed. So there were a lot of things spent. We will not have as much money next year. A lot of that is at the discretion of the appropriations committee and the chair. Exactly how much goes to communities is an excellent question, and I can find that out for you. But the process, a way we've found that we can make this better, and I have spoken to our state senators for Clawson, Mallory McMorrow and Senator Stephanie Chang. And that one of the things we've learned we can do is if the three of us all request the same thing for Clawson, it gives it a much better chance of being accepted as we go through it, especially if it's bicameral. Both houses are pushing for it. So that's something that we're hoping to do. And we're trying to get a very early start this year on asking for these funds, in particular for this project that, as you said, Mr. Raker and I talked about, and was about a $5 million project.
As you know, our needs are far greater than that one tiny project, which is not a tiny project, it's a very significant project, but our needs are much greater. So to the same end on that question, how do we let our representatives and the appropriations committees and make the ultimate decision understand that Clawson is in a very unique position because we're too small for a lot and we're too big for those things that are targeted for small. And we just don't feel like we're getting a proportionate size of the pie that's out there. And we really need, we're going to have to rely on federal and state dollars in order for us to ever be able to put a dent in the need that we have here. And our needs are great. So what would you suggest we do as a community to ensure that we are on the radar?
Well, first I want to say that last year we were told to ask for a $5 million project, and that was the top amount we could ask for in a smaller project. So through this process, this appropriation process, I doubt that we would be able to get a lot more. We can't, it's project based, and that's the one that goes through in the summer. We could ask for more. Frankly, even the applications we get, they'll only have 2 spaces for 2 different projects. I will look into that. I know, speaking again to the city manager last week, that he is working hard on projects, on getting funding from a variety of sources. We can keep our eyes open. I feel like I even sent something about last summer, there was money from a project. I'll have to get back to on that. There was a project out of the city of Detroit where they were looking for projects in struggling cities. It was coming out of the guy who used to be he was one of the founders of Microsoft, who has a connection to Detroit, and he has a huge fund that he's built up. So sometimes it just takes research to figure out where the money is, and all that hard work of creating those asks and hoping for the best. But we will look and see if there's anything else we can think of. And I'll get together with the other 2 offices and see if they have any ideas. The problem is, in this process that we're talking about, that's about the size of the projects generally. There can be more, and we can talk about that, about how maybe we can ask for more, and I can try to do a special ask myself and work with the other senators' teams.
We'd appreciate it. I know that you're limited by the process, right? But maybe our representatives need to help initiate change in the process so that we can have more impactful projects. And we'll take 5 million, we'll take $1 million. We don't care, right? We'll take anything you can offer. But the idea is that the scope of need is greater, and we're not the only ones in this position. There are other communities that are as well. So if there's just anything you could champion for us, we'd be eternally grateful.
It was interesting. I had a long chat this morning with former state rep Padma Kupa, and she was showing me charts about, as you know, revenue sharing is way down. And there are a lot of things about the tax policy in the state that are problematic, and we don't have enough money in the state of Michigan, and that's a problem. I know a lot of times people will talk about, well, what about the schools and are they getting enough money? Public schools are a major part of our budget. It's over $20 billion a year just for public schools. So when you're talking, that's a quarter of that $82 billion, and we're not going to have $82 billion next year. So there's a lot of need everywhere. And yeah, that is how it got parsed this year. And we will keep looking for opportunities in the next year.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I want to give you a better answer.
No, I wasn't expecting you to have an answer. I think, maybe, like I said, the system might need to be changed, and we might need change makers out there to say this isn't working for everyone. It works
Mhm.
really well for some people and for smaller projects, but maybe we need to figure out a way to make it work better for
Pie
communities
is
like
small.
ours.
The pie is small. I know it doesn't seem that way, but where we start is small, and there's a lot of pieces cut into that pie, unfortunately.
We appreciate it. Anyone else? Well, thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. Matt, thanks for coming as
Thank
well.
you so much.
Okay, we will move on to our next item, which is consideration of approving the following consent agenda. Item A, minutes of the regular city council meeting held on Tuesday, December 5th, 2023, as presented. And item B, a list of bills in the amount of $1,473,749.22.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Pinkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. We've approved our consent agenda and our list of bills, and we'll move on to item number 9, which is new business. First item on our new business is consideration of the city clerk employment agreement with G. Michelle Cuckoo. Madam Mayor, I move, but would someone make a motion, please?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I move the city clerk employment agreement with G. Michelle Cuckoo be approved. Any comments? Roll call, please. Oh, sorry, I said any comments? I didn't see anything, so excuse me.
I was curious was this drafted in-house or did the city attorney draft this contract?
The city attorney was part of the contract process.
Okay, thank you.
Ready now? Roll call, please.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinkowski.
Yes,
Thank you, Michelle. You are official with a contract, I should say. Item 9B is consideration of the 2024 schedule of public meetings.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the 2024 schedule of public meetings for the city of Clawson boards and commissions be approved as presented, posted on the city hall bulletin board, posted online and published in the Daily Tribune.
Support.
Any comments? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinkowski,
yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes. Thank you. We've approved our 2024 schedule of public meetings, and they will be posted accordingly. Item 9C is consideration of the traffic safety order at the T intersection of Nama Avenue and Madison Avenue to install a stop sign for the westbound Madison Avenue at Nama Avenue.
So moved.
Support.
Any conversation?
I just have a question. So in reading the report, I see that, we hire the appropriate bodies and they did a study. I was just curious that for this and for a bunch of them, they indicated that there were 0 traffic crashes involved in their studies, yet they still approved them as not being a safety or police officer expert or anything like that. I'm just curious what, if there's no like danger of property damage or whatever, what is the rationale behind their recommendations?
Chuck Keller is here from TIA, so I can let him speak as to the variables that they evaluate before they make that determination.
And it's consistent for all of them, so I'll just ask the question once. Then you can.
Sure, I'm Chuck Keller with the Transportation Improvement Association, TIA. I'm their Director of Engineering. So what we do at these intersections, they asked us to take a look at them because they're existing yield signs and they wanted to know if that was still appropriate or a stop sign should be installed. So the basis for the study is obviously we do look at crash history just as a item to see if there is any potential issues, past issues. Doesn't mean that there couldn't be something in the future. But the biggest thing that we look at is sight distance at the intersection, because if the safe approach speed for a vehicle as they approach the intersection to see other vehicles coming or pedestrians or bicycles or those type of things, if that speed falls below 10 miles an hour, that warrants the stop sign. If they can still approach the intersection at 10 miles an hour or higher, they can make, just look and see that it's clear and move. Well, there's issues of fences, house corners, trees, shrubs, things that have gotten larger or closer to the road over the years, have limited the sight distance to the less than 10 miles an hour as you approach these intersections. So that's why the stop sign would be warranted.
I get it, that makes sense.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Mr. Keller, I noticed on each of these, you talk about the safe approach speed calculation.
Yep.
And it seems like maybe it was attached to your calculations, but were they not?
No, they were not attached. We use the old way used to be a nomograph where you would plot the distances from each side and then you draw the lines and see where they cross the nomograph. It's all on a type of a spreadsheet that's been computerized. So you just got to take the measurements, put it in the speed limits, and then it just gives you the answer. It's pretty easy now.
Okay.
But I typically don't supply that with the studies because it takes a lot of explanation to explain it. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I just
Yep.
wondered if it was supplied and
Okay.
I was just curious because. And also a question for Chief Baus are there more of these coming?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Just one question. It mentioned that all three intersections, there were 0 crashes, which is good. When you mean crashes, are there any records of between a vehicle and a pedestrian? Because that NAMA is the east boundary of Kenwood Elementary.
No, if there was crashes with pedestrian, any type of crashes, it would show up in those crashes.
So is crash a generic term, whether you're crashing in a vehicle or crashing a person?
Pedestrians, bikes, you name it, anything motorized.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, I just, they were all yield signs over there, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there at least was something there and now it's being replaced to something that's probably more appropriate. I always say questions on it because I travel that area. Why there was a yield sign in the first place, but
Yes, I think it was you that brought this up at the meeting before when we had the other
Yeah.
two on there.
Yeah.
So the ones that were on there previously, a couple of meetings ago, were intersections that had been requested by citizens to be evaluated. But then after that council meeting, we decided to take a look at the 3 intersections where the yield signs were, which is what prompted the study.
boy, thank you. Thank you for Christmas card too. Appreciate that.
Roll call, please, Michelle.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett.
Yes. Thank you. We will install that stop sign at the T intersection of Nama and Madison Avenue, and we will move on to the next item, which is consideration of the traffic order at the T intersection of Nama Avenue and Charlevoix Street to install a stop sign for westbound traffic, Charlevoix Street.
So moved.
Support.
Any comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you. We will also add a stop sign to the T intersection at Nama and Charlevoix Street. And we'll move on to the next item, which is a consideration of the traffic control order at the T intersection of Nama Avenue and West Tacoma Street to install a stop sign for westbound West Tacoma Street at Nama.
So move.
Support.
Any comments on this intersection? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Minkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. We will add another stop sign, this one at Nama and West Tacoma. Thank you.
Thank
Chief
you.
Bouse, for your help on this item. We'll move on to item 9F, which is consideration of a contract for hazardous tree removal be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder, Dittman Tree Services, Inc. Motion.
I move the contract for tree removal as specified in the bid documented be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder, Dittman Tree Service, Inc. 10396 St. Clair Highway, Casa, Michigan 48064 at the cost of $129,240 as stated in the bid, with the use of ARPA funds to be approved.
Support.
Thank you. Would you like to speak on this,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Baker?
On October 9th, 2023, the city council voted unanimously to direct the city administration to seek quotes for the removal of hazardous trees. At that meeting, it was explained that the DPW maintains a list of hazardous trees. COVID labor impacts facilitated the unacceptable compilation of an unmanageable number of hazardous trees within the city. There were 4 tree companies contacted to quote removal, stump grinding, and restoration of 97 trees from the city right-of-ways and city parks. It is the recommendation of the Department of Public Works to move forward with the lowest qualified quote for the 3 removal services. The administration recommends the use of ARPA funds based on the rationalization that these funds are relative to the impacts of COVID, which these funds are intended to mitigate. If I may elaborate a little bit more. So these were requests for quotes, and at around 4 o'clock, one of the bidders called and said, I can go lower. And that's not, I don't think that's very businesslike or appropriate, but I wanted to share that with you. They forwarded it to the DPW, who forwarded it to me. And we followed the direction of council. We've got the quotes and finding out, with the disclosure, this was publicly accessible since last Thursday. They decided to sharpen their pencil and, hey, we can do better. My recommendation would be that we continue with the lowest qualified bidder, which is Dittman.
Do they issue their revised quote in writing or just verbally?
No, they did it, they sent it in an email in writing, but
Okay.
we post this agenda on Thursday. They sent this revised bid at like 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock today.
After bids were, after you were,
Quotes, I should say.
after the
quotes.
quotes
It was
were
quotes,
accepted
yes.
and finalized, like you had an end time on your quotes,
They.
closing
yes,
time?
So for everyone's understanding, the requesting quotes is a little bit more informal than a bid process. A bid process has a closed bid open at a certain time, and that's it. And so I kind of think maybe this business may, they're well intended in trying to get the business, but I think from an actual business execution principles that it's kind of would be, I would think, not in good business or in good faith to entertain that.
And the DPW is very satisfied with Dittman, right? We had that conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have reservations about previous service on, at least for tree trimming with Dittman. Some of the trimming that I've seen, I don't know if necessarily they were the ones that had trimmed up some of the Norway maples that I've seen that were improperly pruned. But I have, at least for removal, there's not much you can do about it, right? So I'm satisfied that it's the lowest bid, but again, as far as anything moving forward that, whomever it may be, that they follow, the ordinance that we established, the landscaping ordinance that we updated back 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. Yeah, so I'm okay with moving forward with this. But I'm curious, how competitive was the bid, or you're allowed to say?
I'd rather not, just in case because then it would be starting to tip the hat and then I'm facilitating this less than upstanding type of transaction.
Right.
And I'd rather not.
Okay. So just to follow up again, it's now 97, right? I think we had 89.
97, yes.
Yeah, okay. So that was with some of the review from what I had
Yes,
submitted
sir.
before.
Sure, but absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Well, we have our Assistant Superintendent Ryan McDonald in the building tonight. Ryan, did you want to weigh in on this at all? Are you good? He's good. We got a thumbs up for those of you who can't see. Thank you. Thought I'd give you the opportunity. Okay, but if we don't have any other conversation, let's go for a vote. Please.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski.
No.
Thank you. That passes, and we will retain Dittman Tree Services for our tree removal moving forward. Thank you. We're going to go on to item 9G, which is consideration of the draft proclamation language recognizing the renewed relationship between the Clawson Public Schools and the city of Clawson.
Madam Mayor, I move that the draft language for the proclamation recognizing the renewed relationship between the Clawson Public Schools and the city of Clawson be approved as presented.
Support.
Are you gonna read it? I don't actually have a copy of it. I was gonna defer to our city manager.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So if I can read the summary and rationale. The Clawson Public Schools and the city of Clawson recognize the importance of a harmonious and collaborative relationship between their administrations. Both administrations are requesting their respective governing bodies agree to meet regularly to foster this partnership and wish to adopt a proclamation recognizing our renewed relationship in the near future. Both administrations are suggesting to their governing bodies to approve the draft language of the attached proclamation recognizing our renewed relationship as presented. It will officially be adopted by both governing bodies at a future joint meeting of the City Council and School Board. Mayor Milan, School Board President Frank, Superintendent Schellenbarger, and myself contribute to the development of this draft language. Do you want me to read the?
Would you like it? Sure, I think we should read it.
Okay. Because, I mean, I don't have to read it, but if you want me to, I can.
We'd love for you to read it.
Okay, all right, so. All right, whereas the city of Clawson and the Clawson Public Schools recognize the importance of a harmonious and collaborative relationship between the administration of the school district and city. And whereas our appointed executive leaders have diligently collaborated and believe there is immense community value and a priority to intentionally join forces to collaborate and ensure we move the Clawson community to grow forward together. And whereas this understanding that our school district cannot meet its greatest potential without a strong city, and our city cannot reach its ultimate potential without strong schools. This proclamation hereby memorializes the intent, understanding, and mutual efforts between our governing bodies and directs the Clawson Public Schools Administration and the City of Clawson Administration to collaborate on any and all aspects of the school district and city for the betterment, one second, I have to scroll, of the students and residents. And whereas first and foremost is the safety of our community, especially our children, followed by the optimization of each tax dollar to expel us a stent. And whereas the most immediate and community-wide impacting opportunity for our collaboration is the current and ongoing right sizing of the school district facilities. Whereas this necessary effort has generated concerns for community stakeholders in regards to potential loss of sports fields, assets, and programming. However, both elected bodies and administrations recognize this is an opportunity for greater intergovernmental cooperation coupled with increased sincere community outreach. And whereas this is an exceptionally sensitive and far-reaching topic, there is a need to coalesce our resources and community stakeholders around the examination of optimizing our building sites, athletic assets, recreation assets / services, parks and senior services. And whereas the district and city have the same taxpayers, we shall continuously demonstrate to them the best use of all assets and services for their increased benefit. And whereas we also need our community stakeholders' experience, opinion, expertise, and energy And whereas in order to achieve communal optimization of our assets and programming, the district and the city agreed to form a joint task force. A task force can be defined as a group established to work on a defined task or activity. The addition of the word joint is to bring the significance of our intergovernmental and communal approach. And whereas the joint task force thus far was loosely comprised of key staff from both administrations and will now evolve into the inclusion of 1 to 2 elected members from each governmental body, and ultimately the inclusion of members from various identifiable community stakeholder groups. And whereas this joint task force will be charged with seeking, developing, and vetting suggestions for the optimization of building sites, athletic assets, recreation asset services, parks and senior services for the collective benefit of the Clawson community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that by virtue of our collective authority vested in us by the community of Clawson, we renew our intergovernmental relationship with open minds, with commitment to communication until consensus is reached, and with a willingness to consider all options. Only through transparency and our willingness to work together will we retain the confidence of our residents, with the goal of making our community stronger for all stakeholders. End proclamation, signed by all elected members of both bodies, or will be signed by all members of both bodies.
Oh, I can see it. Hold on. Nice. Yes, what did you say? Can you repeat that? So we said as part of this proclamation discussion that we would talk about, and it talked a lot about cooperation and stuff for the betterment of both parties and all that kind of stuff. How does the comments that the citizen made during public comment fit into that conversation? What's the reality or realistic potential probability of swapping them, gifting us, Sean?
So specific on one or the other, that discussion would probably be best had at the joint meeting. There are opportunities, whether or not it's Sham remains to be seen. We also have to, I would suggest we keep in mind that the school district has been at this for a few years. And so we are getting on board and we want to work with them. They are, the lady in the audience is correct. They are, I think, considering, they're considering moving forward on the 26th. But that's why it was important for us to have a meeting early on in January, so that if we have a viable option, we can present it and suggest it, or, you know, make a case for it. So it gives the actual venue to give it consideration.
So realistic, I know you've had conversations, and I assume there's a price tag associated with Sham. Do you have a ballpark? I mean, I know we don't have a ton of money because we haven't fixed our roads yet. We don't have a ton of money to throw around. What would buying Sham look like price tag wise?
I want to say that he was throwing around the $3 million mark. So
Say that again.
$3 million, but there are other options that we can consider as well. So whether it's the swap of Baker for Hunter, or whatever other consideration there may be. So
Well, the swap of Baker for Hunter doesn't get a Sham.
but Sham might not be, in order for it to happen, both sides have to agree on it, obviously.
I'm just trying to pick,
Yeah.
I get it. I'm just trying to paint the realistic picture of like I want to go buy a new car,
Sure.
but do I have the money for that? Or is it realistically for me to get, a BMW or get another Jeep kind of thing?
I mean, is it possible? I think it is possible. We have to make a cogent argument for it in some way, shape, or form. But also keeping in mind that we're trying to cooperate with the school district, and they are a little bit ahead of us on this. And so there might be other viable options to consider, or maybe I've asked flat out, like, what is the cost for you to put a pause on this? And we can ask that question at the joint meeting again. Like, is there a cost to hold on here? And I don't have an answer to that yet. But if there isn't, then possibly the school district can work with the city council and say, you know what, let's give it its due diligence.
one more question, and that is, do you know, because I know that like the idea of houses brings potential students.
Mhm.
And so, is the motivation, are they motivated? Would money be enough of a motivator, or is part of all of their plans and calculations X many houses, potentially X many students, and that has a,
Yes.
you get where I'm going with that? Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because, I mean, the school district is largely funded by the, how many
Head count.
people they actually have in attendance in their school district, so having more, being able to retain their current student population and then grow it, that's what the intention is.
So I'm sorry, I said one more question I lied. So anything that we would perhaps configure if they could net the same potential houses or something like that. So it's, I guess I'm driving at that their willingness may not just be money, it's netting the additional potential for students as well.
I would say the upfront cost is what their primary concern is first, because the students that's a grand idea. There's nothing to say that, couples may move in and say, I just want a big house so that I can have project rooms or something like that. They might not be bringing students with them.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind it, but it's not to say that is, you can't necessarily require that when it comes to people buying houses.
No, I'm just trying to decide, like, if we, what do we go to the table with? What are they really, what is, their whole big picture that they're trying to accomplish? And it's not just money, I'm sure, because they've got a lot of money, because they passed their
That's strictly for brick and mortar. That can't be used for operations. So.
Right.
So it's important for them to retain and attract students.
Right, so money they gain from selling to a developer can be used for operations, and that's a key differentiation in the funds. So, and that might be built into so they would need to be able to net as much as they could get from the developer is the point. Gotcha. Okay, now I'll be quiet.
Yeah, they were clear that part of the goal is to hopefully bring in more students. You were correct with that, but as city manager stated, there's a lot of people who live in, people just aren't having children the same levels they have in the past, and they have to have a district that attracts people too. So it's the problems, there's a lot of layers here. I think the question today is, are we interested in talking about this? Because we have had residents pose questions for the last couple of months, and we've not really taken the pause ourselves to have a conversation. I think we owe the residents an opportunity to have a conversation. They have some really good points about the effects on our community. And I know it's school property, all of that, but there are some options with properties that we own that could perhaps serve part of the district's intent for housing, but we have to have a willingness to talk about it first. So I guess that's where we are first. And we did say we would give our guests an opportunity to speak at this time. So we should probably do that as well.
Just before we do that, if I may,
Yes.
so one of the other concerns is it's not just the cost for purchasing, it's also what repairs are required and the extent for that. Is it, because it's a larger property than what's at Hunter, and we know what the ballpark cost is in order to repair Hunter. I'm assuming it would be as much, if not possibly more than what Hunter is in order to get Shalom in a usable circumstance for our community.
I would
We don't
have
know,
to,
right?
we'd have to conduct our due diligence before I could really comment on something like that.
Has the school done that as part of their initial phase and looking at options on what they wanted to do for the initial bond?
I believe they have, as far as, the prioritization, and actually, in conversation with them, they share that Baker is the more materially sound building as opposed to Shalom.
Yeah.
But during that, during their process with the task force and all, former city representatives and school representatives met regarding Baker, and the people in play at the time determined that Baker was not a good fit for us. And I think it wasn't great for Parks and Rec Senior Center either, for various reasons, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and I know all of it needs to be talked about, right? There's so many things to talk about, and we just need to decide if we're going to talk about them. And the whole idea of the task force thing, the whole idea for the proclamation was there are opportunities for us. We have a sink or swim for all of us, right? If we have a thriving school district in our city is crumbling around it. We're not gonna have a thriving school district for long. And if we have this bright, shiny city and we don't have good schools, we're gonna be limited as well. So the whole goal is for us to work together and talk about things. And I'm really hopeful that the school district is willing to talk about these things. I was on a call with the youth assistants earlier today. A member from the school district was there and this topic came up. And she made some statements that probably very matter of fact. She was discussing her meeting last night and concerns residents have and made it seem like they are very firm in their dedication to stick to their timeline. But let's have some conversations. Let's see if we can affect that at all and see what we can do for our residents, for our community, because it affects everybody. These decisions affect everyone.
One more comment, if I may, just that this is a unique relationship. There's not many communities with a school district that is 1-for-1. Troy has, I believe, 6 different school districts that are in their community. So there's other communities that have multiple school districts that they have to attend to. This is important that we recognize that relationship, that however the school systems work one way or the other, that will have an immediate effect, direct effect on our community. So I'm glad that we're moving forward with this.
Yes, sir.
I just kind of want to make sure that, you know, what I think is obvious is obvious. This task force would have no ability to make any legislation, approve any purchase decisions. It would not be able to rezone, really wouldn't be able to do anything except talk to each other, correct? That's correct.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay, anything? Oh, public discussion. Do I need to do anything to not get in trouble to have public discussion?
We need to suspend the rules.
Yeah, you would have to.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I move to suspend the rules to allow for public discussion.
We have support. We need a vote. We do.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Benkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett.
Yes.
thank you. We have suspended our rules to allow for public comment on this topic. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Ron McCauley. I live at 1008 West Selfridge. I've been here multiple times in the last year, talking this subject and other things about the street repairs. We were at the school board meeting last night. We gave our opinions. We felt that that was very negatively taken, that they are not really interested in working with the city. They're only worried about making money. I've tried to tell them, but I didn't tell them last night. I should have told them that Clawson is landlocked. We've only got one chance to keep green areas associated with the park, and that's Sham. If Sham goes away and goes to houses or whatever, we have no recourse to get any more green land anywhere because we're landlocked. So I know the city manager has been talking to the superintendent of schools because he said that a couple meetings ago that he was dealing with them. But I don't know what the issue is with the schools. I mean, if they get Hunter, they could build houses over there, which will offset what you're going to do at Sham and get new families coming in there with maybe new kids too. We're not sure if Sham's people that buy houses there are going to have any kids. They may be my age. So we don't know if they're going to have kids, but they're definitely going to put in another 60 or 70 more cars in that area, which we don't need any more cars around that area because you know how it is during the 4th of July, baseball games, football games, and they're going to be moving. They got to keep moving stuff away from the high school because they don't have enough parking over there for all the new teachers that are moving from Kenwood, Sham, over to the new school district, school combination, whatever. So, you know, if they tear down the tennis courts, where do they go? They got to go to the park to play tennis. If they I think they already did tear down that baseball field that was there. Where are they going to be? They're going to be at the park playing games over there. So there's going to be more cars going over there now because of all these added sports that are moving from the high school compound. So, like I said, maybe the representative from the state here, she can help us get some money. But I mean, if in fact they want, I heard 2.4 million, what they wanted for Sham, but I don't know how much Hunter's worth. It may be worth $1 million. So they could build houses over there. I know around Sham, they got a tremendous sewer problem. Who's going to fix that? Oh, the city is. The school's not going to pay for that. The city's going to pay for that. And any other thing that goes around that area, the city's going to get it. You might get some taxes from those houses, but you get taxes from the ones over at Hunter. So, we got to really look at getting the school system board or whatever they're called to start working with the city and stop thinking about the dollars. I got the impression that all they wanted the money for was to give raises to teachers. Well, that's great. Ask the citizens of Clawson to pass a millage to give them some money for the teachers or whatever they need. I know the millage that we passed for doing what they're doing at the schools right now, we passed that. But they didn't tell us exactly what they were going to do with that money, except consolidate over there at the compound up there to high school. They didn't tell us what they're going to do with Sham, what they're going to do. Well, they told us about a little bit about Kenwood, but they keep stuff behind it. They couldn't answer a question last night and wouldn't, because they got to have an assessment of opinion on what they want to do. So if our city manager can work with them and get stuff delayed a while so we can get this straightened out, I think we need to do that. Okay? And we have to put the police department over to do that. We can do that too. Thank you.
Mr. McCauley. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic?
My name is Ginny Sham, and this is my dog Karma, a leader dog. We live at 1046 West Southridge Boulevard, right here in Clawson. I have lived in Clawson my entire life. My parents lived here from the 30s on. My uncle, Paul August Sham, for which the school was named, came here to work in the school system of our city in the 20s. We've all in our family used the park and used the school system. They need to be, as was stated in the proclamation, together. I know that when an elementary school in that section of town was first proposed, we're talking many decades ago, it was to be approximately at Manitou and Broadacre. And the superintendent, my uncle, worked with the city in having Sham School, they didn't know the name at the time, where it is currently today. The city was expanding north and westward. There were no houses north or west of Selfridge at that time. That's where movement was going. That's why they moved the location of the elementary school to where it is now, to take care of all that housing that came in. Okay, so now this prepares us to be able to make this part of the park. If you listen to what other people in town are saying, they think this is the only logical possibility to do. We need more park space. We need more parking. We need more everything, a green space and everything. All those things we need. I really applaud the fact that a proclamation was made to this governing body, because we were thinking as residents that you guys were not even listening to us. This is the third time I've brought this before the city council. And I would hope that you would talk with the school system and come up with something. The task force is a beginning. Have a bond issue to get money. Okay? Any questions?
I think we're good.
Thank you on the behalf of my uncle.
Thank
Hi.
you. Is there anyone else? Okay, then we have a motion. I guess we accept our motion, right? We'll do a roll call for the motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bigkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes. Thank you. We have moved the proclamation that was read earlier regarding a relationship with the school district will be approved and executed in the future. And that we will be meeting together with the school district in the near future to discuss this. Now, is there something we want to do as a body to discuss this prior to going with the school board? Or are we just going to go to the school board with all of our questions when we go to our joint meeting? That's a question. Why did you say that?
I think in our conversations that we had with Mr. Schellenbarger, we talked that, hey, everything, all options are on the table.
Okay.
Now, there is a deadline on the horizon for them. We have to somehow make a compelling argument if we can get them to delay that possibly. If that so happens to be the desire of this body. In conjunction with their agreement, obviously. Right.
Well, both sites, whether it's Shalom or Hunter. As you've brought out some earlier reports, Hunter's in pretty bad condition.
Mhm.
You can see it with your naked eye, and the cost to renovate are significant. Shalom, to the naked eye, looks good. It ought to look good. I've helped vote for a bond issue back in the late '90s when my kids went there. And they renovated, they expanded, everything was beautiful. To the naked eye, Shalom looks really good. I think, Mr. Shepherd, you'd expressed some concerns about that.
I go into Sholm for basketball practice on Friday nights, and I've been in the inside. It's not in the greatest condition. I think it's a little bit better than Hunter, but there's obviously some repairs that need to happen. And like I mentioned, it's a larger property for the most part than Hunter is. But I'd hate to see as small as it is, another basketball court go. We do have, Hunter has a court, Kenwood has a court. We have now a new court that's over at the high school, but these are the other things that I'd like to have be considered as part of, the overall recreation opportunities that we have for our community. But again, my concern is that there's probably something else that's underneath the school that we may not even be fully aware of that needs more repair. So my concern is that, we need to know about all of that as we have this discussion. I'm certainly concerned about and echo the green space aspect. You're right. We have, that's a resource that we need to do our best and try to maintain. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, the 1-for-1 relationship with the school district. At one point, they were losing 90 kids a year in enrollment. I think that's lessened, but I don't think they're getting more at this point. So hopefully, with their expectations that if there is some additional housing, that there may be some more kids, but at least we need to stem the tide to some degree. But we have an overall balance between the education and enrollment for our kids, and also for the other aspects for recreation, for our senior citizens having a safe space to gather. I think these are all need to be brought up and considered.
Well, we'll be talking about those soon, and I look forward to more citizen participation when we do start those conversations, because I think that's the most important factor here. is, the residents supported the bond issue. And that was for the schools, right, to improve our schools. And some of the concerns, some of the comments we've heard that I've heard recently is, residents weren't really giving impact on what would happen to Shalom or the surrounding areas, and perhaps just a conversation so people understand the value to our community of those things as well, that it's bigger than just putting your kid, having a safe place with good technology and, good buildings. We want our community is broader than just the schools, and we want to ensure that we have that everywhere. So, yes, sir.
So while we're still on this topic, I was going to do it during my city manager report, but just so you're aware, the school board met and they agreed yesterday that January 8th at 7 p.m. I tried for 7:30, Councilmember, not 7. So mark your calendars if you would for the joint meeting. I'll say it again in separate my comments.
Okay. Have we determined where? We as in you guys.
We will have that wrapped up by Friday.
Okay.
Chances are the facility probably most accommodating is over at the high school.
Okay, that'll be great. We look forward to that.
Is that their regular scheduled meeting?
No.
Is that open to the public?
Yes, it will be.
The question was, is that open to the public? And yes, of course, that will be open to the public. The public will be encouraged on all sides, I'm sure. Thank you. So thank you for bringing your concerns to us tonight. We're always happy to talk about them, and we look forward to see what we can do, at least to create a dialogue. So we'll move on to item 9H, which is consideration of discussing the potential impacts of the new city charter.
Madam Mayor, I move to discuss the potential impact of the new charter.
Support.
Mr. Newshine, are you doing that? Mr. Yes.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I prepared a few slides to help our discussion. I send them over to our assistant city manager, who will be guiding us through them one by one. I only prepared a few. Of course, when I sent them to Nick responded with 25 slides. Good grief. So I will blow through a few of them, just move quickly through a few of them. They're not all substantive, of course.
I hope he did that in his best Charlie Brown voice.
He did. So, Nick, I'll take the next one if you don't mind. So, obviously, just stating somewhat of the obvious, the current charter was adopted in 1940 at the inception of the city. Part of the current charter left over were from the original village charter, Village of Clawson, and there'd been obviously a lot of changes over the years. The charter was outdated in many respects, but obviously by operation of state and federal laws. And if you recall, or if you can, you can still see in our clause on the Municode, you see our charter currently has a lot of those statements from, this was modified by such and such case law, or this case, or this particular law. So we, people of the city of Clawson obviously moved to enable the charter commission to consider potential updates to the, I'll take the next one, to consider updates to the Clawson charter in November 2021. The charter commission was formed, and then subsequent to the election of the charter commission, consisting of 9 members, they began their work. The charter commission worked through 8 different versions of the potential amendments to our charter. The final version was submitted to the governor in the state of Michigan. They came back with, obviously the modifications, the final modifications. Those, the governor and the state of Michigan approved it, approved the potential changes, and then, of course, the voters in November 2023 moved and approved the potential all the changes and adopted the new charter. New charter takes effect in January of 2024. So the way as you noticed in the packet, Madam Mayor, I put amendments on the left, the things that we actually changed or the Charter Commission changed, the new charters moved to change within our old charter, and then the considerations on the right, meaning the impact to our code of ordinances and things that we probably need to consider. Chapter 1, which is boundaries, as you can imagine, there was very minor changes. Unfortunately, we did not invade any of our neighboring cities. The new charter.
We can't annex Canada.
I would have taken really long, to be honest. The new charter did away with some of those notes, references that were made unnecessary by operation of time. So there was no impact on the ordinances. But with respect to chapter 2, the official title, again, there were no amendments and no impact on ordinances. Chapter 3 deals with the general powers of the city. There were a lot of amendments here. There was derivation of city's powers. There was a statement added there that the city's powers derive from the Home Rule Cities Act. That's obviously the act that governs all municipalities. There was a section added that talks about intergovernmental cooperation. It added a new section. Obviously, this body has seen, those interlocal agreements, especially with the city of Troy, but all, County of Oakland. We've had those in the past. This now formalizes it. The condemnation procedures, which we had a specific provision in the old charter dealing with condemnation procedures. Now they're covered by, there's a separate act that deals with them all throughout the state. This new charter reflects the reality, did away with the old language. Property value threshold was updated as far as acquisition. As far as sales, I should say. And I put a little note there talking about parks because I think this will be one of the areas of potential consideration for a council to take action with respect to the ordinances. Then, a few minor changes dealt with the impounding of vehicles, aircraft licensing, and there was a provision with respect to non-discrimination and equal rights that was added. So as you'll notice on the right, there are some considerations that council ought to have with respect to this, to add to the body of our code of ordinances. One, in my mind, dealt with the acquisition of property and parks. We don't have, and the new charter sort of gives language as far as what we do if we wanted to give up land. How do we go about it? The sale provisions. But I think there was some opening left to this body to deal with what we do as far as acquisition for a situation such as the one that has been presented by some of the members of the audience tonight and the council has considered. We don't have anything particularly on the books right now in the court of ordinances. And I think we probably ought to have designed a process. I think it's worth having that conversation, how we go about it. And I'll give you as a, not for parks specifically, but for example, there's some law there that we've sort of brushed closely with. If you recall, council had the option, for example, to purchase the property that currently, as by way of tax foreclosure, the property that currently sits where Biscuits and Gravy is. And situations like that will occur over time. And I think council will probably come close with those kind of situations in the future without barring an actual act of bringing it forth before council. I think it may make more sense to, instead of waiting from external forces to bring those actions to you, if we had a provision in our code of ordinances that dictated how we handle those purchases, I think may make a lot of sense. In the another consideration with respect to our ordinances would be, we've adopted the motor vehicle code. We've done that in our code of ordinances, but there's a lot of ordinances that would need to be updated as far as the motor vehicle code is concerned. I think we'll have some work to do in that regard. Chapter 4, plan of government, council, obviously, as you know, was expanded. A resident requirement was updated. The eligibility age for members of council was reduced and the mayor's term was prolonged. There's also now language dealing with city versus regular election language. This appears fairly minute as far as the charter is concerned. If you recall, though, this is going to save us on account of some litigation that we had not too long ago. We dealt with this very issue, the meaning of a municipal election versus a regular election. I think that was very good. And then some minor updates as far as the language for the city manager, the title of the city manager, as well as the conservator of the peace, which was one of the titles given to the mayor. They removed that particular term because it caused confusion. So additionally, organizational meeting was clarified, changed to require only one monthly meeting as far as the meetings of the body, even though council obviously has opted to maintain its two per procedure, only one is required. It deleted certain provisions conflicting with the OMA, as well as city manager residency requirements, which were for some time have been outlawed. Added language specifying the city manager is in charge of employees and appointed officers. Lots of changes here, so bear with us. It continues with there was a provisions dealing with non-interference of council members with, or of council rather, with administration. It deleted the provisions regarding the auditor. It transferred, as you know, the city clerk and treasurer, made them as city manager appointees starting January 1st. Delineated the language concerning the city clerk being no longer the accountant for the city. And then the board of review updated language for the general, board of review has there's a specific act that deals with the board of review. It now reflects, our new charter reflects that. And then the certain civil infractions language was added. Further, in the spirit of updates, we had a provision, a detailed provision dealing with the health officer of the city, which is, we haven't had one in some time. It removed that particular provision. It updated county commissioner language, which in our old charter, it spoke about a certain process of appointment as used to be done way back when. Obviously, we elect our county election commissioners now. Certain updates were done to the council compensation language. Nepotism language was updated in chapter 4. Certain minor language with respect to bonds, bonding being required for staff that handles money. And then also legal incapacity language was added for vacancy considerations throughout the various positions. Also, we obviously, as the 5 of you will undoubtedly know, we do have a code of ethics. This charter added certain language with respect to conflict of interest, and it added an ethics section, which in certain, it mirrors the code of ethics that we have, the ethics ordinance that we have. It removed, and this was, I thought important. It removed any language which required the resignation of anyone throughout serving in the various boards throughout the city when they run for an election. So if you recall beforehand, if you were a member of the planning commission or any other commission in the city, you would have to resign before being able to run for, let's say, city council of the city. It was. And we've lost some good people, I think, over time on account of that requirement. So this was, this accurately, I think, did away with that particular provision. It clarified that, we had some language that I'm not sure how good a job we did here, but there was some clarification of the language about swearing in officials before taking office. It increased to 90 days from 60, the time following an election prohibiting removal of appointees. Those were largely the changes. So there was a lot of changes in chapter 4. There's obviously, because of all the changes, in many ways, there is, I think, greater clarity now with respect to that particular charter. We'll have a lot less contention going forward as far as the basis of it. It does have an impact on a few areas of our ordinances. I think I think the Charter Commission did a very good job with respect to this chapter, in my humble opinion. But obviously, language that impacted civil infraction, I think we will need to, this body will need to consider some of these provisions. The ethics ordinance, I think not so much from the charter, but I think overall may need to be reconsidered. Obviously, we've seen its operation now for the course of a few years. I think the rules around the ethics ordinance need to be tightened a little bit. I think the standards perhaps need to be reviewed by council. It's important that we do so. None of these, and I'll say this now, but this applies to all of these changes. None of these have any urgency to them. The proposed changes to the Code of Ordinances, the impact of the Code of Ordinances. Obviously, this takes effect in January 1st, but Chapter 18 of the new charter, it has all the transitional language and the details what will happen as far as if there is some sort of a conflict between a provision of the charter, or if our code of ordinances, some segment of our code of ordinances becomes outdated or is in conflict with, or whether it can be severed or not. So I think the issue of urgency is not as pressing as one would imagine. I think time is on our side. I think we need to move obviously expeditiously, but we do have time to there's nothing urgent about this per se. But I think the ethics ordinance is one of those areas where probably council needs to take up and consider those, the impact of the charter. And also with respect to resignations and vacancies, I think the charter has left some room in order to more properly define what transpires as far as resignations and vacancies in the various boards and our council to operate by way of an ordinance. Chapter 5 dealt of the UCHR deals with elections. It removed basically all the language that was superseded by Michigan election law. As far as the ordinances are concerned, Chapter 22 of the Code of Ordinances deals with election of the Code of Ordinances deals with elections. I think that particular chapter of the Code of Ordinances should be reviewed comprehensively. Obviously, a lot of what we do is mandated by state law, but there's a lot of obviously actions that our city clerk takes that we as a city are involved in that I think need to be reviewed, updated. Now, one of those is the mayor's term of office. Obviously, now is entirely different. Starting with the next election. 4 years as opposed to 2, so it's superseded by the charter, by the new charter. So some of those updates need to occur. Chapter 6 deals with the general finance, city budget, and funds. There were some amendments done here. One was the investment policy by council was added, which is very interesting and very thoughtful. And there was also language that was deleted and updated, superseded by a different act. And here there's going to be some work necessary with respect to crafting new ordinances by council. One, the investment policy considerations are very interesting. Again, they tie in many ways. It'll be important to the work of this body and the work of the city. But again, an investment policy may be something that has to do, for example, with park acquisitions, and how do we treat those kind of actions? How does the administration deal with those kind of issues when they present themselves? What is the guidance by council? I think that would be very important. Also, additional ordinances will need to be reviewed with respect to finance, Department of Finance. I think that they have been impacted and they need to be reviewed comprehensively. Part of this, we have, if you recall, in our Code of Ordinances, as well as in the old charter, we had language about purchasing authority and discretionary spending as it pertains to the city manager and the city manager's office. I think this is probably a good time to review that, to deal with ordinance once and for all. I know in the past, the council has even had motions with respect to attempting to delineate how the city manager's discretionary spending or limits operate. I think to do so by ordinance makes perfect sense, especially given the changes that Chapter 6 has provided. There's obviously there's a lot of ordinances that probably will need to be considered with respect to the budgets of various boards, and they need to be reviewed. We have currently in our Code of Ordinances, we have several ordinances that deal with, the board of review, and many boards that are specific in nature, and they deal with, they have, specific items that deal with finances. I think this impacts them, and I think there's a probably more comprehensive policy that needs to be expressed by way of ordinance. Council should take a look at those. Chapter 7 deals with general assessments and taxation. The amendments here were more just getting basically having the charter reflect the statutes that authorize and currently govern our actions. Certain board of review procedures were updated, and council vacating taxes authority was removed. So the ordinances that we need to review here deal with chapter 70. Also, we need to consider, perhaps council needs to consider a process of ordinance for tax abatement. I know sometimes in the past, there has been such considerations on an individual basis. Delineating a policy, of course, makes sense, so that it'd be more, they could operate in more seamless fashion. Chapter 8 deals with bonds, minor changes here, no impact. Chapter 9 deals with special assessments. As far as the amendments are concerned, they removed, they only allowed one statement left, as far as the chapter 9 is concerned. It dealt with the power to determine whether to defray all or part of the cost of any improvement. As far as the impact and consideration, as far as the code of ordinances is concerned, the entire body of the chapter on assessments should be reviewed and considered. A new charter simply grants the authority, leaving council to adopt to do its own work as far as how to handle special assessments, considering obviously everything that you heard earlier tonight and all the needs that the city will have. Special assessment may become an important tool in your in what you do in order to accomplish a lot of the tasks ahead. So this will be an important area for us to take a look at. Chapter 10 deals with the charter deals with streets and sidewalks. The amendments there was a change in voting requirements for vacating streets. I know this body has dealt with vacating streets on a couple of occasions. We haven't had too many of those, but we've dealt with them. It removed also construction, repair, and naming authority and process. I think the ordinances, chapter 6 which deals with this area, council needs to review and see if it is sufficient for your consideration or whether we need to add changes to it. On previous occasion, if you recall, we've dealt with naming of streets. It was done sort of an ad hoc basis by council by way of motion. That process became somewhat clunky and it was open to a lot of back and forth. And I think it probably speaks to the need for having an ordinance that deals with it in such fashion to where we know exactly what needs to transpire. Chapter 11 deals with, of the new charter deals with sewers and drains. The amendments that were made here, it dealt with, it altered private connections from language, which private connections from individuals, obviously the city sewers and drains. It changed language from, basically, from shall to may, and it deleted provisions which dealt with local intergovernmental agreements. What that did is, for our purposes, Chapter 82 of the Code of Ordinances covers utilities. It covers so comprehensively. There's a lot of ordinances and language there that deals with this. It is detailed. Slight updates may be necessary, but for the most part, this is probably, of all the items, this is the one that probably can take, sort of a back burner approach as far as the work of council. Chapter 12 deals with the water supply. Again, here, chapter 82, again, because the utilities of the Code of Ordinances, because of our utilities, it deals with this. Again, updates may be necessary, but they're slight in nature. They can take some time. Chapter 13 of the new charter deals with franchises and public utilities. It updated certain constitutional limitation on franchise terms, and it removed the city's authority to license and regulate utilities. The regulation portion only deals with utilities that it does not own. Again, chapter 82 of the Code of Ordinances covers this fairly comprehensively and in detailed fashion. Chapter 14 of the new charter deals with contracts. The amendments here were fairly grand in scope. They removed a section and entirely leaving it to the council to establish all the rules by way of ordinance. And this is another area that I think council, this is probably in the order of urgency, this probably should take precedence. I think council needs to detail a contract process, bidding by way of ordinance, contract limits. Obviously the new charter does give us some indication as far as which direction to go. It updated, for example, as we said earlier, language about the sales authority of council and what those limits are. It updated the limits, for example, as far as the sale of land to $400,000 before, that would be the limit for council to be able to initiate the sale. Anything above and beyond that amount would have to go to the voters. I think that shows an indication as far as how to use funding and, limits. This is obviously a very updated limit from what we had before, which was some calculation basically on a couple of dollars per square foot or something like that. So this is important. I think contract amount limits, contract processing, process bidding, clarification of budgeted versus non-budgeted items, I think would come into play here. What I mean by that is obviously council passes a budget every year. In that grant of authority, you authorize dollars to go to specific items and general items all throughout for the business of the city. By way of ordinance, probably makes sense to start thinking about whether council does need to go and approve each of these contracts now individually, or whether once something is budgeted for, does it need to come back to you again? I think these kind of directions need to be received by council. And then, of course, the new, at the last meeting, council voted for, and I wanted to include it in here, for the new ordinance, which is the purchasing agent number of votes required, and there was an update as far as that by way of Mr. Bienkowski's motion, which was now to be proportional to maintain the numbers that we had before, or in proportionality. Chapter 15 deals with plats. Obviously, this one has been removed in its entirety because Michigan Land Division Act governs all this. The Code of Ordinances has a comprehensive procedure regarding land development in Chapter 34. I think obviously this area needs to start with the Planning Commission if any changes are going to be made, because of course it deals with the use of land. Chapter 16, which is ordinances. There was a few amendments here. There's a concept that we have in law, which is cost of prosecutions. A lot of us, prosecuting throughout the metropolitan area have utilized this in the not too distant past, attempting to collect back the cost for each prosecution by way of calculating what those costs are. There was some case law that basically said that prosecutors had no such authority to do so. This correctly recognized that. There were minor updates to method of publication. Initiative and referendum power was explained. I wish they had done more in this regard. If you recall, we dealt with the language dealing with initiative and referendum power of the city and by way of a few lawsuits dealing with marijuana a few years back. That was the very focus of that litigation. I think that's one area where council probably needs to spend some time and properly designate the process. It's still somewhat murky even after the chapter update. The time to circulate petitions now is set at 60 days. Council used to have subpoena power. It no longer does. The new charter removed that. There was a limitation of damages by the city was removed. This was very popular throughout municipalities for many, many years, where councils would say we're hereby limiting our damages to any lawsuits because we can do so. This correctly reflects the state of the law, which says you may not do that. And then a couple of obsolete sections were taken out, and all throughout the chapter 16 ordinances, and the updated maximum penalty for ordinance violations per state law was updated. As I said, there's some work to be done as far as initiative and referendum ordinances. I think when we do so, this will probably be a good time to take another look at our special events ordinance. That can be, I think, by operation of time, it's shown that it can be a little clunky and open to too much interpretation. I think we probably need to take another look at that. Then I wrote there trees, shrubs, and plants and real property citations. I think and this is from my perspective, we have ordinance that deals with trees, shrubs and plants, but only for what you cannot put down. I think some positive language is missing as far as those ordinances that we have pursuant to chapter 16 in our code of ordinances. I think some work in that regard may be appropriate. Chapter 17, I promise we're almost done. Chapter 17, which deals with submission and election, it provided that a new charter revision to be, this is probably one of the most fundamental changes of fundamental importance in the charter. It states that a provision that it added for a charter revision question to be submitted to the voters of the city every 12 years. So every 12 years, we'll have an issue that goes back before the voters. I think that's, for me as an attorney, I think that's very important. I think you'll force our hand to do some of the work as opposed to having to do this one big fell swoop kind of change and process as far as the charter is concerned. This will help us keep it updated over the years. I think that's very important. And then, of course, it removes certain outdated language from the previous charter. Chapter 18 of the, which is the final chapter of the new charter, deals with the transition. It added transitional provisions regarding all critical aspects of the charter. Again, the date of effect being January 1st, 2024. It speaks as to, transitional language with respect to all officers and employees, departments, offices, agencies, pending matters, ordinances, appointed officers, contracts, council actions, boards, and elective officers. Meaning what it did is it allowed us to, in this chapter, the new charter allows us to be able to move forward, even where some of our ordinances may not be up to date now or may be in conflict. It allows us to move forward and do so gradually, get stuff to get updated. So I think overall, these were the changes. Overall, there's some work to be done by council, and it can be comprehensive in nature, or it will be comprehensive in nature. It will take some time for us to be able to do so. At the end of the day, if you think about, a meeting such as this, you'll probably have the ability to do a couple at a time per meeting, first reading, second reading. So within the 2 meetings that you'll have a month, to do 2 or 3 of these at any given time, I think is probably the pace that you will want to go. Obviously, as it's up to you. I think though, because of the nature, if you think just to talk about 18 chapters, it's taken whatever time it took me to tell you about these changes. It's comprehensive work at the end of the day. I think it makes sense for council to vote and create maybe an ad hoc committee that deals with this. So we can have a couple of members of council and then a couple of members from the city to sort of go through these chapters one by one and start, generating language, having the conversation, and then bring that, those proposed amendments with a buy-in from the members of council to the body as a whole for your consideration. It probably makes sense. Obviously, it's up to you. I make the recommendation because, again, to speak about them, we could do so in order, obviously, sequentially, take them chapter by chapter. It just may be a little bit of a clunky process. We're happy to do it. I'm happy to follow. And I've spoken with, obviously, the city manager with respect to this. We're happy to follow your lead as far as it's concerned, but we do think that perhaps an ad hoc committee or some committee of some sort to deal with this may make the most sense.
So the process you just described is what we could have done rather than going out for a revision to our charter in the first place, correct?
Yes and no. So to deal with the ordinances, yes, absolutely, yes.
But the ordinances would have covered those things, right? We could, not that it was bad that it happened, it's over, good. We have to move on, but look at all the work we still have as a result of the several changes that were made throughout the process. And my only comment to that is we could have been doing that, and we did have people in place who had a goal of doing that, but we never did it because there's always so much other work to be done. So I just want to make sure when we do it, like if we're going to start it, we actually accomplish what we're set out to do. And I understand the idea of an ad hoc committee is probably a really good idea to get things moving. And to that effect, I would love to be on that ad hoc committee. I don't know how you guys want to come up with who we select to do that as a council member.
I think the idea of a committee is excellent. I had actually, as I've been pouring through the ordinances, I noticed that this scale of revisions was going to be necessary. And it's not all due to the new charter. In fact, a lot of these ordinances just needed to be revised anyways, just due to changes in state law. So I would be happy to serve on a committee. I think a two-person committee would be a good idea, and we can pound out a couple of these every month and bring them back to the council for discussion and votes and move on from there.
So I personally don't like the idea of a committee just because all of us were elected to drive whatever changes, whatever things are put in place, and to peel off a couple of us to have all those discussions. It loses the impact of each of us individuals that were elected by the citizens to drive that change. I think I get that it's might be more expeditious, but if we make a timeline and make sure that we address at least, one piece at every council meeting, then that ensures that all the voices are heard, that all of us are doing our elected responsibility for having, driving those change and helping to craft how things are going forward. I don't like the idea of just a couple of us going off and doing stuff and then bringing it back for more discussion. The discussion should take place with everybody at the table. Is just my personal opinion.
Hold on one second. Let me see if anyone, do you guys have any weigh in on this before we go?
The ad hoc committee, what would be the maximum membership? I think it's supposed to be like 2 because that's not a quorum.
Correct. And obviously, as time passes and we have the thing, well,
When we
hopefully
get 7,
be
we
done.
go to 3.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll be done. We'll be more inclusive in one respect, but yes, because of the quorum limitations, I think 2 is the number to go as far as members of council are concerned.
Councilmember Shepherd, did you?
Just as far as the ad hoc, obviously, we'll have the opportunity to decide who's on there, and it doesn't necessarily limit to just 2 people. It could be other people within those boards that are affected, or what's the limitation on what we can choose?
The only limitation will be for members of council because you will be the only ones voting. Everybody else will not be voting. So you can, and we're talking about this now. It doesn't have to be now. You can think about this. We can have this, conversation on, but I think you can have members of other boards. I can imagine as we're talking, okay, this no longer applies, but if we're talking about plats and you're talking about planning commission, it makes sense to have a member or 2 for the planning commission. But it depends on how council wishes to proceed in this regard.
Councilman Binkowski.
I appreciate the point made by Councilmember Moffett. And yeah, it's important for everyone to have their say, but I really do think that the task is too big to just, let the city attorney propose something and bring it to us every 2 council meetings or so. And I really think it, and frankly, if it was myself and the mayor, we don't agree on a lot of things, but at least both of our, voices would be there, and we can start to hack out some of these things and figure out the best way. Because a lot of the things that we're going to be citing these ordinances are going to be, really preferences of the council. So we can always change that at the table, but just to get, the ball rolling and to get it going, I really do think a committee is the best way to go.
What if we have 3 people who want to be on the committee?
We vote.
As far as the selection, you mean? Yes, absolutely. You would have to vote. Absolutely.
In other words, the committee is simply going to help them draft the language, and it still has to be approved by the council.
Yeah, it would be proposed and brought to you, to the body as a whole, and just as we do with every other ordinance, this will be more, again, as we were saying earlier, there's a lot of areas that the committee could go into as far as just what's an immediate need versus what could take a back seat. I just proposed to you that perhaps contracts would be the way to go. Well, the two members of the committee may say, no, that's not necessary, but referendums, initiatory petitions, we don't want marijuana to come back, may well come back. That's something of an more of an emergency.
See, that's an important point, though. Those things need to be decided by the entire body and not just two individuals. Like the agenda and what's going to be considered and what the components of it are need to be decided by the entire elected body, not just two individuals of the body. I think I get that there'll be lengthy discussions, but that's the job, that's what we signed up for. So, let's make a timeline of what we're going to discuss or what the topics are. But everything you talked about is the responsibility of this entire body to decide and strategize and speak on behalf of the citizens for what they want, not just two people off in a corner in a non, broadcast meeting for everybody to hear what the opinions are and what the direction is. Like, that's the purpose of the council and those of us who are elected.
But the decisions wouldn't be made by the small body. That would be the way I see it is what we did with what we're proposing to do with the school district, first of all, right? We're gonna put together a committee or a group, and then we're gonna send a couple willing participants from this body off to go and be our representatives, not to make decisions on our behalf, but to have conversations on our behalf. Similarly to what we did when Councilmember Tinlin and Councilmember Shepherd worked on a
Boards and commissions.
yes, right? So we've done that a little bit, and maybe we could parse that. We don't have to make a decision today. I think today is probably not a good idea to make a decision on this, but I do think it provides an opportunity for getting through the weeds a little bit and having heavy conversations and then bringing them back and then having perhaps a little bit lighter conversation when everyone gets added to the table, not negating anyone's opinion or voice, because that's the last thing we would want to do is take that out. But if we can get to a different place and then come in and not have to do an hour and a half of something and then maybe get it cut down to 20 minutes because some of the questions have already been asked, because I may ask the same questions you have, or he may ask, or whomever, right? We may ask similar questions and get there. And then if the questions are posed again, then we have an answer. Then we have a more succinct answer. But if you guys want to think about this for a little bit, we can think about it.
It flies in the face of what he just said. The committee's going to decide what topics to take up and what they're going to address.
We're not the deciding, that would not be a deciding, we don't have the authority. That committee would not have the authority to make a determination for this board. They would just be a fact finder or an information gatherer for the board. Yes, sir.
But is not the whole purpose for them to hone down the conversation? Like, what is their purpose then? If they're not having any discussions and pulling things out and adding things in and deciding what's being brought forward, like they're deciding something, and to the extent that they're deciding anything that usurps the purpose of the body.
I mean, Councilman.
Hold on, city manager, his hand up, city manager has his hand up, let him go.
Yeah, Councilmember.
I can't see this.
Councilmember Robin, I know that when you have large legislative bodies to draft legislation, you have to have subcommittees. You have a judicial committee, you have a defense committee, whatever, you name it. That of course makes sense for a large body because you can never have a room of 100 people hashing things out. And I see your point that we're so small with 5. Maybe that's the appropriate thing, but there is a lot of work to be done. The point is this body has to have representation working with them to kind of, how should we say it, narrow the process down before it's brought to us. And it sounds like what you're saying to me is that because there's only 5 of us, we should all be actively engaged in this committee work.
Agreed.
Okay.
And you said narrow stuff down. That means that a few people are throwing stuff out and deciding what gets presented to everybody. In my mind, that's a decision.
Exactly. Well, it's a nomination process.
I don't see
It's
it
a
that
slug.
way.
And let's face it, any legislation, any body, guess what? That committee is gonna do all the talking and nobody else is gonna be engaged. It can still be a public meeting. It has to be brought to the body. I guarantee you defense policy in this country is not debated by hundreds of people. It's debated by a couple dozen in a room, which can be public or private. I mean, I agree they shouldn't be locked in a smoke-filled room figuring it all out and then unleashing it to the body. I think the meetings would be public, would they not, Rennis?
Yes, the meeting could be public, absolutely.
Would that help in your opinion?
But three of us can't be there. So
No, all five of you can be there. Two of you can be members of the committee and have a conversation. Your participation by more than two members, active participation by more than two members becomes problematic because only then would some of the concerns that you're raising, and I'm not dismissive of those concerns, actually, quite the contrary. But I think only then, with the participation of three or more, would they come into reality. When you only have two members, those concerns fall by the wayside because by definition, you do not have the ability to vote. And I think the council member is correct. Mr. Anderson is correct in his sense of there is, and when a committee, think of the United States Senate, Congress, anywhere else, it doesn't apply any differently here. When a committee proposes to the general body the language of a law, right, whatever that may be, right, there certain choices have been made about what the committee wishes to propose, but then the amendment process occurs. Nothing prevents you from adding, detracting, taking away, changing, modifying, additions, deletions, corrections, all that. So nothing prevents you from doing, or prevents the body from doing that, from having the conversation that is fuller than the conversation that may have occurred, lesser and more limited as we would hope, and more targeted, I should say. But I don't believe it's limiting in any way, shape, or form to the body.
I just, last thing I'll say and then I'll shut up, but I think it's all of our responsibilities. Those of us who are opposed to the charter, like, oh, we should all be involved and we should all be making the decisions and it shouldn't be a small committee. And here we are, well, let's get a committee to do it instead of doing our job. That's where I stand.
Seriously, the new charter does allow for it.
It allows for one meeting a month too, and we all said that's not how we should run. We're a small city. We're a small group of elected people. It's a lot of work, but that's the job we signed up for. And I just feel like as a group, we need to all do the job. That's all I can say.
Mr. Ricker, you had your hand up a long time ago, and I tried.
So I wasn't intending to talk over you. I was looking this way.
I'm good.
Just a question regarding having discussion with the ad hoc committee, which will be a public meeting. We are not limiting our ability to debate what is discussed, how it's presented, or what decisions we make.
No, not at all. I mean, if you think about it, at the end of the day, all right, it would be, so those being the 18 chapters that you have before you with the new charter, containing whatever amendments that we just talked about, one way or another, we're going to bring that to you. So it's going to be either, city manager and myself, we're going to chat about it. And would say, let's talk, let's bring these two up for this next coming meeting. And the five of you then would take the considerations. Or we would have some more participation as far as we'll take in chapter one, so to remove some of those concerns, we'll take chapter 1 first, right? Or chapter 2 and chapter 3 and so on and so forth. With the participation of a couple of members of council to debate the issues, with the participation of members of the public, whomever it may be, and then presenting it to the larger body, and the larger body would have the same conversation the body has always with respect to these issues.
So I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that one of the concerns that came up last year was the urgency of potential legislation that we needed to review. That those are the types of situations that may take precedent because of the priority, because of the urgency. And if we have at least discussion that's still ongoing regarding the changes that are necessary for the charter, that we can do both at the same time. And if we don't like what's coming in front of us, we can have that debate. We can change whatever we see in front of us that's coming out of the committee. So that, again, that goes back to the debate and the amendment process and making sure that, our concerns are being brought up. But that short-term leasing arrangement, that was something we needed to quickly act on. And it took a little longer than I had hoped. But Yeah, that's the thing that.
There's a lot of work, I agree, and there's a lot of work necessitated here, not simply by operation of the new charter, and I don't want to make it sound as if that was the case. I think our code of ordinances, is equally stagnant to the charter, and over time, we've passed ordinances. And I'll tell you, like, one of the first things, when I first got involved with the city, one of the first things that we did, for example, we talked about marijuana and illegal transportation of marijuana. And this was now, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. And I remember when we passed that, I was very proud of it because that was the time that medical marijuana had just been passed. Marijuana was still illegal per se, but medical marijuana was legal. Transportation issues were at the forefront, and we put, anyways, I thought it was the greatest thing we could have possibly done. And Mr. King said, pass it along to you, to the body, and the body passed. Within a year, that those kinds of ordinances were deemed unconstitutional. It's still in our books. This body, we haven't had the time to be able to deal with something like that. I know it's unconstitutional. I know it's there, though. It's inapplicable. We need to clean it up. Right. There's a lot of those kinds of little changes. I mean, that's one that is just sort of sticks in my mind because it was the first one that I dealt with. But we have a few of those, special events ordinance is one of them. The one that council deals with as far as liquor licenses. The authority of council when it comes to liquor licenses and the actions that you have to take with respect to liquor licenses is problematic. It's clunky. It needs to be updated. The council authority is limited, to say the least, if not non-existent. That's not necessitated by the charter, but this is a good process, I think. Whichever path council chooses, it's a good moment to use as an impetus to start looking comprehensively at the entire code of ordinances.
This is an ad hoc committee. I assume that with multiple members, there may be disagreements on how to proceed. How is it determined what is presented to the body? To the council, in essence, they're making a suggestion of draft language for an ordinance. How is that resolved? Do you actually have voting members within the committee?
There wouldn't be any votes per se. In that sense, it would be dissimilar from what we would have as far as committees on the United States Senate and things of that nature, where they do actually vote to usher something out of committee. But here you're operating, in this sense, you're operating with a general consensus, or you're not operating at all. You send to council a note that says, we've talked about X, Y, and Z issues. Nothing to bring to you. The council we would have the determination here. Would bring to you, or the city manager would have an item on the agenda that says, chapter 16, nothing to deliver. We need to consider. Here's the issues that we talked about. Where does council wish to go? Motion to discuss, second, vote.
Madam Mayor, so to address what priority, what we're gonna take, we rely on the city attorney to give us that guidance and direction. He did that in his presentation, suggesting what may be of greater importance and a priority over other things. I would imagine, should an ad hoc committee get established, then the dialogue would be, okay, city attorney, what do we suggest is next? And I would imagine that would probably be the best way to go about doing it. Or if there was a need to have discussion, we could come back and, all right, council members, what is your pleasure? We don't have an obvious choice for what's next. Have some dialogue on that. But I think it would be helpful to the administration if we had some direction coming out of this. If this is something that we want to talk about in January again, I'll just have this on the agenda again. Or if there are two people that, I've heard the discussion as far as two people willing to serve on it, that can be an agenda item itself. But I'm trying to not step on any toes and at the same time make some progress.
What do we have here? Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so is establishing it, we have to nominate an individual. You can't do it by two people at the same time, or is that
You would have to know, you'd have to nominate a couple of people from council or, I mean, obviously there were, I see at least.
We first have a motion to establish the ad hoc committee, and then if that passes, then you can start deciding who's gonna be on it. That needs to be the first discussion.
Today.
Wait, do we-
Maybe we need a little more time to think this over. I don't know.
I think that's a good idea.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I'm willing to put the motion out now, so. Well, I will move to form a city ordinance review committee effective January 1st, 2024. Made up of 2 council members and the city attorney or his representative. To meet in public with proper notice given to public to discuss potential changes to the ordinances of the city of Clawson. Support.
I would like this to be a unanimous decision if we're gonna create committees. I would like everyone on council to feel comfortable with having them. I just think that's, I do agree with some of the points Councilmember Moffett made. Well, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Moffett, but I also do think that there's a plus to having an ad hoc committee. I do think that we could move some things along faster. I think we could also maybe, if we take a step back, maybe not approve this right now, maybe there's some things we could do that would make it more palatable to everyone. Maybe we create a committee, but we shift off who is involved at various points and not based on topic, right? Like it would have to be super random that so-and-so is going to do it now, someone else will do it then, someone else will do it again, so that no one has a pet project in there where they may get an unfair advantage on a voice of something. But I think it's not about getting an unfair advantage or bringing out, I feel it's exactly the same as these things that we get, where we have something brought before us and we have the opportunity to question and investigate, and then we make a decision. I feel like it's going to be the same thing, just brought forth by a different body. That's my perspective.
I feel the same as the mayor. I mean, I feel comfortable proceeding. I sympathize with the concerns of Councilmember Moffett that if this were a large legislature, committees are absolute requirement to do business. We're about as small as you can get. So the question is, are city council meetings in effect committee meetings? Have they merged and become one? I don't know. I'm comfortable with going with the 2-member committee, but at the same time, I agree with the mayor that I'd feel a lot better if it were unanimous, so. That's. I mean, this is a serious issue because it doesn't just speak to ordinance, it speaks to other potential issues we have to discuss. And so how we resolve this, I honestly like some level of unanimity.
I agree. It's a very serious issue. I feel firmly that it's part of all of our jobs. So I'm not going to acquiesce just to get unity. I'm going to stand firm. We were all elected to represent the citizens of this community. We each need to do that duty. And I get if it's a lot of work, but that's what we signed up for. It's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm a lone wolf over here, but that's I don't care. I don't care. I believe strongly that that's our job and that's what we signed up to do, and we should be doing it.
Yeah, I just don't see that it takes away from the end job. That's the part that I differ on. I just don't see that it takes away from it in the end. If there's appropriate time for questions, answers, reflection, input, right? Because whatever's presented, it doesn't have to be accepted and it can be tweaked, just like everything else is tweaked. And the conversation could be longer the second time around than it was the first time around, or it could be minuscule, right? It could be all of those things.
Then we're being redundant, and that's silly. If they're gonna have all kinds of lengthy discussions, and we're gonna have lengthy discussions, why not have one lengthy discussion with everyone present? I mean, but whatever. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. We can agree to disagree, and it's what it is.
I'm assuming that the committee meetings would be public.
Yes.
So it's not like it'll be locked in a smoke-filled room, they come up with something and out it comes. Any one of us be welcome to sit and listen and find out how the discussion is proceeding. It would almost be an informal council meeting in a sense.
which we.
No, in other words, a third or fourth council member could not even be present at the meeting.
Yeah, we would discourage it, but. If you think about it, I was gonna say every bad case law and municipal law starts with, 4 council members at a bar. Okay, we don't want that because it's seen as something they may well not be. But that said, you could have all 5 of you, 2 members participating actively in the discussions, the others participating by observing, open to the public, not an issue. If I may make, and I don't mean to end the conversation or anything like that, if I may make just a brief point that Michelle has reminded me, there's a motion discussed on the table. There's discussion. I don't believe that motion needed a vote. So technically speaking, that motion ended upon Mr. Binkowski's motion, which is now on the table, Michelle, for all intents and purposes. With a second, there's that discussion happening right now, just for point of procedure, if I may.
So we got ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the motion that you vote on now,
All right.
on Mr. Binkowski's motion.
If I can give another example. Some of these, I mean, my understanding is some committees certain legislatures will gravitate toward their area of expertise. And, if you're on a judiciary subcommittee, you're kind of tend to have a lot of attorneys and former judges. If it's a defense subcommittee, you'll probably have a lot of veterans. Honestly, at our level, if they want to talk about trees, bushes, green spaces, I don't have a burning desire to be on that subcommittee, but I think he'd be a great pick. I think that's.
If I may interject, I mean, I would love to have somebody else have that conversation, right? I would love to enter it after the fact, but I would love to see other people's perspective on that, not just be the person that, I'm looked at as the expert in that. I appreciate that.
So I believe that the point that was being made a moment ago was we should not be discussing this particular time. Okay, good.
You can discuss, you're discussing Mr. Binkowski's motion.
Okay, cool. So we have this motion that's on the floor. If it were to fail today, if people feel more comfortable having a discussion about this on a different day, we can let it fail. If you are confident in setting up this committee, then we need to vote for that. Are we comfortable going? We have a motion and a second, so we have it on the floor.
So I guess, are we done?
Let's have the vote.
Any further discussion? Or we can take it to a vote now.
If you say so.
I'm just asking, Mayor.
No, I think that's where we are, right?
Okay.
Michelle's like,
Councilmember
really?
Binkowski. Councilmember
We're
Binkowski.
taking a roll.
Oh, yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
No,
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
So we have agreed to set up a committee to discuss the charter revisions and the ordinances moving forward. Now, do we want to nominate 2 individuals to serve on this committee at this time? Then I will make a motion that I would like to throw my name out for that, and I would also like to
Support.
hear who else wants to do it, quick.
You have
you got.
motion and support for
Yeah.
yourself.
Vote on yours, yes.
Yep.
I was gonna do them both at once, just to get it over with. Roll call. Oh, wait, sorry, yes.
Maybe this is the wrong time to ask a question of the attorney.
It's never.
There's discussion, you could have discussion on that motion, but it has to be germane.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. My question is a little broader than that, so I'll back now. Go and do the roll call.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move to amend your motion to include myself along with you on the committee.
Support. So we have to vote for the amendment and then, okay.
Package deal.
For the amendment.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
No,
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski.
Yes.
Okay, we have just approved that, Councilmember Binkowski and I will serve as.
But that's the amendment.
Nope, no, sorry, that was amendment.
need another one for your
Yeah,
motion.
sorry. Then, yes, roll call. We already made it, right? So now we just roll call again. I'm so
So you
tired.
made a motion. Go.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
No.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Minkowski.
Yes.
Can you tell me what we just did, Michelle?
You created a committee for you two to serve on.
Yep, I knew that, thanks. Okay. Thank you. Can I request we take a brief break? I know everyone's dying to get out of here, but I really need to take a brief break before we address our last several items.
If you, someone make a motion to recess for 10 minutes?
5 or 10, however everyone wants.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to recess for 10 minutes, returning back at 9:50.
Support.
9:50. I just can't sit here.
Need a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Minkowski.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll see you in 10. We are back and I'd like to thank you for accommodating our brief break. We're going to pick up where we left off, which is agenda item 9I. This item is consideration of discussing the status of the fiscal year 2023-24 council administration goals and objectives.
So move.
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard.
Well, council members, if you would like, we could put this on the next agenda for the sake of time, if you'd like, or we can discuss it tonight. I'll proceed unless anyone's saying no. That's fine.
We're good.
Okay. In coordination with the fiscal year 23-24 budget, the council and administration developed and approved 6 goals with supporting objectives. As we are nearing the halfway point of the fiscal year, the administration want to present a visual status report to demonstrate the progress towards attaining the objectives within the goals. The progress of each goal is color-coded in the following rationale. Red, the objective has not been started. Orange, objective is receiving preliminary efforts. Yellow, objective is in progress. Green, the objective is achieved, completed, and or ongoing. Members of the administration are available in here to take your questions and discuss. So, can you show that?
Do we have any questions?
Mr. Raker, having read your, you color coded green, yellow, and that. The yellow is in progress. I mean, I'm guessing I'm going a little memory here, but I think, is it possible to put target dates on the in process?
That wasn't part of the discussion with goals and objectives.
Right, understand, but I'm just saying, in some cases where it's applicable and can be forecasted, maybe.
We could, I'll work with staff to establish some of those.
Sure.
I'll have another update probably as we gather steam for the next fiscal year budget discussions. So I can have anticipated completion dates or a greater explanation at that time.
Sure, and I understand there are some you will not be able to put an estimated completion date just because the nature of what you're into, but as time goes by, obviously we hope to complete tasks and at some point one can project an endpoint, so just something to consider.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Okay, then. No more discussion.
No, there's-
That wasn't a lot of a discussion for discussion. items.
There's, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, there's a lot of good things on these goals and objectives. I'm just wondering if maybe we need to re-review them a little sooner rather than later, especially with the addition of myself and Councilmember Moffett. If we might set up a meeting in January to go through them and kind of fine tune things. And I know, he's, the reason I want to do it sooner is I want to do it before the city manager plans his budget for the next fiscal year. I want him to know what our thoughts as a council are as to the priorities for the city. And if we do this in June, it's too late.
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I don't have any commentary on the goals and objectives because they weren't goals and objectives that I participated in. There was from a different body, a different mindset, a different time. I don't think that, I would have put any of these as goals and objectives. To Mr. Raker's point, when we met, roads aren't on here, and there's some other, they're very, very, very squishy, and they're not, they're just squishy in my mind. And I think that we have a lot of things facing us, and we need some more tangible goals and objectives going forward would be what my approach would be to it.
I believe when we addressed them previously, part of the reason that hard items like the roads and stuff isn't on there because those are absolutes, right? And we were looking for small things we could address right away, but you're correct in that. And I think it's not a bad idea to have a meeting, an organizational type meeting, again, to just kind of get everyone on the same board and share thoughts to bring things up a little bit. That's not a bad idea.
Okay, so what is this meeting, please?
He, as suggested by Councilmember Binkowski, which would be to discuss the goals that are here currently. And then for them to allow new members input or just to even have a touch base on them, which I guess this could be right now, right? We could be considering that's what this is, a touch base to see what other things you feel would be important to add to the list that's already there. So, I mean, it's kind of clearly working list, right? We're not limited to the items that were previously identified last year. But I want to make sure everyone feels like they're represented, their thoughts are represented in the process as well. That's important.
It seems to me if we were to have a study session and sit down and without maybe the constraints of Robert's rules and the procedure here and just talk and just try to work out this list, maybe we could, hire a facilitator, help do it that way. And really try to, get some goals and objectives that are very tangible, measurable, and that represent, the needs of the community. We talked earlier tonight about the schools and the property sales and so forth. And I just want to make sure that we're all on, that the city manager has a proper focus as to what him and the staff should be working on in 2024.
I agree.
Okay, so
So would this be a special meeting or an agenda item on a regular meeting?
I'd much rather have a special meeting, call it a study session, so it's.
Or like a workshop?
A workshop.
Okay.
Whatever, so it's not, obviously it would be noticed and open to the public, but we don't need to, sit here and make a series of motions and so forth.
And as much as I don't want to spend unnecessary money, what are your ideas for a facilitator? Like, it's not a bad idea to keep us on task and someone with some sort of, expertise or acumen in city management or something like that, but to help us, what were you thinking when you suggested that?
I know that other cities have used them in the past. I could reach out to some of my friends on other councils and see what they've done. I really didn't have anything too specific in mind. I just, it's nice to be able to have someone, apart from us,
Someone with no emotional investment.
With no emotional investment.
I agree 100%, right?
Who didn't go through elections and so forth.
Right, who's gonna just keep us on a constructive task and help us craft, like you said, measurable, tangible, goals and objectives that for the benefit of the city to strategic plan and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can see the value of a facilitator in many situations, but isn't that kind of our job here to work that out?
I think though that we are all pretty passionate about what needs to happen. And I think that having an objective outside person to help drive us to inclusion and help us strip away some of the passion and get to more concrete resolutions. Like, I look at, again, nothing against anything you guys did, but the word squishy comes to mind. Like these aren't
They're very generalized. I agree.
and they're very emotional, right? They're not marching orders for what you need to go and set the agenda forward for getting some of the things that are addressing us, are facing us addressed. And I think that having someone that helps us sort of stay on that task and can shepherd us into that more, concrete conversations is not a bad idea.
I prefer not to have a facilitator because it doesn't seem friendly. I feel like this body hasn't had the opportunity to come together to present ideas, share ideas, and build a consensus. We haven't had that opportunity, and bringing someone in makes it seem like it's gonna be contentious. And I don't think there's any reason for it to be contentious. It's just gonna be an idea sharing opportunity. And I think we can do that on our own.
It's a facilitator, not a judge.
I know, but it changes the tenor in the room. It will change all of that. And I would like administration have the confidence that we are coming in friendly, right? Like it's a conversation, it's gonna be a conversation all the way around, and ultimately this body does get to determine those things. And we can build on what's there, and the reason those were there was, there was a theory on why those items were selected last time. This group wants to come up with something different, that's fine too, to incorporate, but we can vote on a facilitator. I just don't think it's a wise use of funds. I just don't.
As far as having, if you may, Madam Mayor, let's have a discussion. I'm all for that. Right? We can go back and take a look as far as, if there's something that begs for some more concrete information, that's fine. But I don't know if a facilitator necessarily gets us to that point. We can have that discussion. Right? So, but yeah, let's have a meeting. That's great. I mean, to do it now, it's probably a little bit late in the evening for that. If we have dedicated an evening for this, that would be great too.
I would agree. We should have a meeting. But yeah, as far as the facilitator goes, I'd like to hold off on that until we can, have a little more time as a body.
But Bruce, I think in the Senate, they always have facilitators.
Mayor, that's right.
They had 100 people, yeah.
Mr. Raker.
Right now, the January 2nd meeting agenda is a little light. We can bring this back and have further discussion on this if you'd like.
We could, although I think Councilman Binkowski proposed wants a workshop, a little more informal atmosphere. I see that. At the same time, I'm tempted to put it on the January 2nd meeting too. I mean,
Well, we could move to, have the city manager set up a date for a workshop and then discuss facilitator or how the format is on January 2nd. I'd rather get a date put down or start to,
and we say establish that in our January 2nd meeting.
We could.
If I may, we typically start doing our budget workshops around March timeframe and we can pick this up a little bit earlier in February. The point of this was to drive the evaluation of me as well with these goals and objectives. And I think one of the things that we'll find out whether we do or do not use a facilitator is getting whether a goal and objective is squishy or not, or are we turning it into a to-do list as opposed to a goal and objective. And so one is more ideal in nature and one is more specific and it's on your list of things to do.
Well, I can say that my goals and objectives at my job are pretty cut and dry, You write this many applications, you do this many things and so forth. And yes, I don't think that would necessarily translate to the city manager job, but I think we need to really set out what we want truly accomplished. And we all ran on things that we wanted to accomplish. And the only way we can accomplish those things is through the city manager and his staff. So, like I said, I would like to set a date for the a workshop to discuss and revise goals and objectives. If we want to wait until January 2nd to set that date, that's fine with me either.
Pick a date, make a motion.
What's that?
So pick a date, make a motion.
Well, I move that we set a workshop to revise and set new goals for the city sometime in the month of January. To be organized by the city manager per all our schedules.
Support.
That's.
So we're not precluding our discussion of having this on the 2nd, right?
No, we can discuss everything on the 2nd.
Sure. So I don't mind having and I'm not opposed to having a workshop. I think we need to have that, this brought in front of us on the 2nd. If we have a light agenda, let's start the discussion then. And if we need to, let's have that workshop.
So, but the motion is to have a special meeting in the month of January, right? That's the
Yeah.
motion on the table.
Yeah.
So that's the motion.
Which, so if on the second we have this conversation and we don't need the meeting, we don't need the meeting. Is that
Or you can
correct?
make a motion on the second. Or you can make that motion on the second if there was a need for it.
Anyone else? So roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes. So we will meet on the second for our regularly scheduled meeting. We will discuss goals and objectives, and if necessary, schedule a meeting moving forward. I think that's what we just did.
Yes.
So.
That's not my opinion, what we just.
No.
My opinion was that we were setting up a workshop.
Right.
Yeah, we just.
Oh, I am just giving you the idea of all of what we said prior to that, right? Yes, what's the time, right?
Not February, not March, not December, but January. And Mr. Raker, of course, will try to collect. some
We'll
dates.
coordinate with us and find us a good time.
Okay, enough of that. We'll move on to old unfinished business, which I'm assuming we have none. And then we'll move on to public comments for items not on the agenda. We have none. Then we have a city clerk's report. Michelle?
I'm gonna make it real short tonight. I put in everyone's mailbox the updated boards and commission list for you to pick up. It's just more for informational, let you know what's, what we need and what's available out there.
Thank you.
So so I see we have, at the little break we had, I took a look at it. We have quite a few expired terms, there. Are we gonna publish those, get the word out for people to apply? I mean, how do we get those filled? There's a lot of yellow on there, and some pretty old expired, appointments.
Obviously, the applications are always available. In fact, I think there's some in the back of the room. We're always open to new applicants. And we forward them on as soon as we receive them.
So to that end, previously the charter had some provisions about appointments to boards. New charter says nothing.
Correct.
So we need a new procedure or something to address how that's gonna happen.
Absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think that one is important enough that it bypasses this committee, and I think that should be on the agenda for the meeting next, for the next meeting for us all to discuss, because that's a pretty sensitive, it's been a bone of contention. In fact, I move that the city attorney work with the city manager to put a discussion of addressing the absence of a provision in the new charter for the appointment of citizens to boards and commissions as a topic so that we can start addressing it.
And just,
I made a motion.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
Support.
Now you can.
Sorry. And obviously, and I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt, of course. It occurs to me, though, that there are obviously certain ordinances that already have that built in. Right, for example, the ethics ordinance has already a process.
Correct.
So there's a lot of that, but I think Madam Mayor, Pro Tem Board, I think you're speaking about the larger process, creating something that probably makes more sense, and I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's necessary. So we'll bring it up for discussion so that the body can, if obviously the vote is such,
Right.
but whether it be through the vote, if it carries, or through the committee, we'll bring that up sooner rather than later, along with Mr. Binkowski's motion, which did carry, obviously, as far as the ratio for votes on the purchasing agent.
I think just in light of the number of vacancies we have and the fact that the former way that privilege was afforded to the mayor was something that, like I said, was a bone of contention. We need to solidify exactly how it's going to happen in this new world. I think it's really important that we all get to weigh in, because I know all of us are somewhat passionate about it. So I think it needs to be a discussion, is my thoughts.
So the the mayor has the ability to appoint, and then the council has the privilege of approving. That didn't get erased with the charter. It was covered how? Because I talked specifically to charter commission members about that, and they said, no, we didn't address that at all.
It's silent now,
It's
so
silent,
the provisions of the previous charter, if they're not present in the new charter, they don't exist, right? It's a clean slate for things. If it's silent about it, we need to either make an ordinance or.
But we'll address it all. I think it's worth having a conversation, obviously, but nothing, whatever the charter contains, the charter will trump. The ordinances that we have in effect that have specific provisions will continue unless obviously this body opts to change. But I think a process makes sense to have a discussion on that. I think, again, if council so deems it, of course.
Yes, I mean, I'm a little surprised that somehow, of course, what was presented to us was, we're not rewriting the charter, we're just revising it. Well, did they specifically strike out those provisions for the mayor and the entire forming of committees and bodies and commissions?
So there's silence with respect to some of these areas.
Was there silence before?
No.
Okay.
So the
They struck
authority,
something out.
so we'll look at this particular portion of it specifically, because obviously there were changes with respect to the role of the mayor as well as the authority of the city manager. So, the combination thereof, obviously the authority of council members, there's enough there to be able for all of us to look at. When it comes to the ordinances, I think designating a process, an ordinance that designates a process, I think does make sense, so that it'd be a comprehensive process.
So they struck it out because they felt it was better addressed by an ordinance than an element.
I can show us the reasoning behind it.
I mean, I heard that reason brought out a lot, that things that they felt were better addressed by.
Well, there's
ordinance.
actually, there's language in the new charter, if you'll notice, there's language in there that you're exactly right. In certain areas, this should be, is probably handled by ordinance. I think this is an area that's properly handled by ordinance. But obviously the mayor has certain authority. Council has certain authority. Delineating that, I think, will be important going forward.
Mr. Raker, you had your hand up?
So then this would be something to be considered by the ordinance committee, vetted through there, and then brought to the council.
My motion
but
was that we
yeah,
use, that we, as a council, address this at the next meeting because of the gravity of the importance of this to the people sitting here, because it's been voted contention. So it needs to be voted on. The motion might fail, but it's a motion on the table.
That's why
I would say that the next meeting is probably not the best time for that, just because of the holidays, and the next meeting is the 2nd of January, and we also have the school board meeting. So if we're just having discussion on it, I mean, with the expectation is that we have something before council for your consideration.
The motion was for a discussion.
So I want to discuss, what's the bone of contention then, that this list exists and it would be improper for the city mayor to make the appointments as opposed to council? I'm assuming you want council to make the appointments as opposed to
No,
the mayor.
I don't want
making
anyone
the
to do it.
appointments.
I'm just saying the new charter is silent. So, and if you recall, the last time we had appointments, there was concerns that all the applications weren't shared with everyone, and that was fine because the answer was the charter before gave the mayor the authority to receive the applications and make the appointment, and the council approved it. That was what the charter said. The charter that goes into effect January 1st is silent on that. There is no guidance of that the mayor gets to make the appointments and the council only can approve or deny. It's silent. There's no rules. So we need rules around it. We may all vote that we want to keep the same sort of thing in place where the mayor, one of the privileges of being mayors that the mayor gets to appoint and the council affirms or denies. But the fact of the matter is that provision no longer exists because the charter is silent on it. So we need a process for how we're going to appoint our people to the boards in 2024. Because as of January 1, we don't have a rule anymore. And the last time, there were several council members that were upset with the adherence to the charter provisions. And so now it's gone. We can't say it's the charter. It says it's what we have to do. We need some guidance.
My guess is the council members of oppositions had little to do with the charter and everything to do with who made the nomination and who the individuals were.
And that you could be absolutely right. But at the end of the day, that the process got to continue because the charter afforded that opportunity. The charter no longer affords that opportunity. So now it's a different ballgame. And we got to make new rules.
So we have a list of everything else that the charter no longer affords the opportunity for, so we can hit them all at the same time, because they may all have the same amount of precedent.
Just out of curiosity, we're not appointing anybody right now. We're not appointing anybody in the next couple of weeks, right? So I don't necessarily see the urgency of having it be on the second. I think we can have our time to discuss this. The only concern I had was regarding the compensation committee. And the fact that according to the charter, which will expire, that it should have happened this year. But since it's going to expire, then it's a moot point anyway. So
the Court of Ordinances does still have the ordinance that speaks to mayor appointments. Right, that hasn't, I think that's what the mayor is referencing.
Right.
The charter, though, I agree with you, is now silent with respect to some of those duties of the mayor. What does that mean? Right,
That's the whole idea. There's charter and ordinances, though, right? Which was my point earlier where Councilmember Binkowski said the charter didn't create these ordinance issues, which I agree. They created some new ones. They didn't create all of the issues. Like, they're inherently problematic because they've not been double checked over all the years, right? And things change. So this is an example of that as well. And I know we don't need to talk about it next. We have people sitting here waiting for something that's going to be way better than this. So I don't want to keep you guys much longer.
So the ordinance that, the ordinance that you have is in effect, is valid and enforceable, and it continues. If the body wishes to, on a consideration of whatever may be missing from the charter, take another stab at the ordinance, is absolutely perfectly appropriate for you to do so. I leave you to your thoughts as far as the immediacy of it. I think it can be, from what it's worth, I think it can be handled by the ad hoc committee that you just created. You don't need to go into the overdrive with respect to any and all of these issues. But obviously it's entirely up to you.
So the reason we have 15 vacancies that expire in 2023, there's 15 expired appointments. So those need to be addressed. In order to address them, we need to know exactly what the procedure and policy is going to be.
If I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Binkowski, but again, at this particular moment in time, you would follow your ordinance, which is section 2.2 for appointments. It continues to be in effect.
So there's no need to change the ordinance unless, of course, you want to change the ordinance because it still exists.
It is. The ordinance is still in effect. The charter, you're absolutely correct, is silent on these issues.
Yeah, right. But that's okay, whatever. Councilman.
Madam Mayor, could I ask the city clerk to reread the motion?
I have, that the city attorney would work with the city manager to put discussion addressing the absence of a process to appoint to the boards and commissions.
Yes.
And without a date.
Excuse me.
No, I said at the next council.
She said at the next meeting.
Yeah, I will move to change the next meeting to January 16th meeting.
Support.
We do have a boards and commissions policy that was approved by council. And I believe I provided that to both of the new and returning council members.
That's fair, but it was the policy that conflicted with what the practice was last time. We had a heated discussion last time trying to get appointments, and I'm just trying to get out ahead of it. There's 2 motions on the floor.
First.
Councilmember Anderson?
Wait, could you read it first?
It's
We're amending the motion with the date of January 16th to bring this back for discussion.
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
point of clarification. We're voting on the amendment
To go to January sixteenth.
to go to the sixteenth. So that if that is voted down, then we go to the second.
Yes.
But if we vote, okay, but if we vote down the initial motion, does it all die or does the amendment exist?
No, amendment does not exist.
Okay, so you have to vote for both in order to have the sixteenth be the.
Correct.
Okay. Yes,
That's the main motion.
that was the vote.
Yes.
That was the amendment. Now.
That was the amendment.
Yeah.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the sixteenth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then are we finished with the city clerk? That was all about you, Michelle. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the city attorney's report.
I've already spoken a lot. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't realize about the passing of Ryan McDonald. I don't know if any of you actually knew him. If you did, I think you'd agree with me that he was absolutely infectious as far as the loving personality and the sense of humor that he had. And I, for one, will miss him tremendously. I knew him from my time, starting from my time when I clerked in Troy before becoming an attorney. He was a detective along with Scott Cervello, just an absolutely, just a beautiful man, and I will miss him dearly. And I think all of Clawson will. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to our city manager's report, Mr. Raker.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Just a reminder that Monday, January 8th at 7 p.m. will be the joint meeting for council and the school district. During the last city council meeting, I admit I got a little heated on a couple items. It wasn't my best moment, and for that I apologize to the Clawson community and to this council. Finally, in an effort to establish a new tradition, I'd like to again present a year in review presentation. Staff and I have worked throughout the year to capture positive moments, efforts, and collaboration of council, staff, and community members.
We need popcorn next time.
He goes to the staff, ma'am.
So watching that just shows all of everyone is involved in so much that affects people's lives so greatly, which I think is why each of us who do this for fun are here. And it's just so heartwarming. Like, we know each of you a little bit individually and see what you do. And I just want to tell you thank you too. And I know this is your floor, but everything matters, right? No matter the big, the small, and the in between, it just all matters, and it all goes into making something wonderful. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you all for your leadership, and thank you all for what you do. It just touched my heart, and I really appreciate that you also threw in the partners that we have that are not part of that, but the inclusivity of all. It's just very nicely done. Thank you.
Mr.
You know,
Vince
it's just
Smith
a
had a lot to do with
snapshot.
that.
Pardon me?
Mr. Vince Smith had a lot to do with that.
Mr. Vince Smith. The music was exceptional.
Hardest part.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Nick had to go on top of that building for a couple shots, so if I recall. Does anyone else have any comments for city manager? Do you have anything else for your report? I'm assuming you're like, why top that, right? Okay, then we'll move from city manager's exceptional report for all of his exceptional people one more time to our exceptional city council comments for the last time for 2023. Councilmember Binkowski.
No, I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just want to make sure, wish everyone happy holidays and happy new year, and
Yep, that's it. Councilmember Anderson.
No comment, just Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. And Councilmember Shepherd.
Wishing everybody the best holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Looking forward to seeing everybody in 2024.
Yeah, and I'll just echo all of those responses. Thank you for letting us do what we do. We're really proud to represent you. And I know this is not it's happy holidays and Merry Christmas, but everyone doesn't feel that this time of year. So I guess I would just ask if you know someone who's not feeling it, go out there and make them feel it better. And if you're not feeling it, come on, know you're loved anyways and try. Just do a fake and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. We'll see you in 2024. And thank you, Bridget.
Madam Mayor, move we adjourn.
Support.
All roll call. I just want to say all in favor.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bukowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Woo-hoo.
They're not any different, are they? That one's gonna sit on the desk for a bit.